I've been married to Amanda for 5 years, and for the most part I thought we had a great relationship. Sure, like any couple we had our ups and downs, but who does? We met in college, fell in love, and built a life together in the suburbs of Nashville. I thought we were the kind of couple that would always make it, you know. Good jobs, decent house, and a puppy named Max that we both adored. Everything seemed perfect until it was. Lately, I noticed some changes in Amanda's behavior. At first it was subtle. She started coming home later from her girls' nights out. I figured they were just having a good time, but it began to feel like I was being left out of her life. I'd text her, and sometimes it would take hours for her to reply. The excuses were always the same. Sorry babe, the traffic was awful, or I lost track of time at the bar. I began to feel something was off, but I pushed those thoughts aside. Who wants to think their spouse is cheating, right? But then came the night I really started to worry. I had forgotten my work laptop at home and needed it for a late-night project. I decided to swing by our place around 10 p.m. on a Thursday. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Amanda's car was still gone. Odd for a weeknight, but I brushed it off, thinking she was probably just having one of those nights. I unlocked the front door and headed upstairs to grab my laptop. But as I walked past our bedroom, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear faint music coming from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, so I crept closer. I could hear the unmistakable sound of a DJ, and my heart sank. Amanda had always loved going out to clubs, but this was different. I looked in through the crack in the door, and what I saw shook me to my core. My wife was sitting on our bed, her phone in hand, and I could see the reflection of a man on the screen, her face lit up with excitement. I couldn't quite make out who it was, but something about the way she was smiling made my stomach churn. That's when I decided to take action. I didn't want to confront her just yet. I wanted to gather more information. Over the next few weeks, I began digging into her phone and social media, looking for anything that could give me a clue. I came across some messages that would change everything. Flirting, explicit texts, and even plans to meet up with a DJ. The DJ. My heart raced. I recognized the name. He was a local DJ at a popular nightclub downtown. I never thought I'd be the guy who would go through his wife's phone, but I felt compelled to know the truth. One evening, after what felt like an eternity of gathering clues, I confronted Amanda about the messages I had found. I can still feel the tension in my chest as I walked into the living room, my hands trembling as I showed her the screenshots. Her reaction was immediate. She went pale, and for a split second, I could see the panic in her eyes. "Amanda, who is this guy?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. She stammered, "That's nobody, just a friend. You know how much I love going out with my friends. You're overreacting." But I couldn't let her brush it off like that. I pressed on, asking about the texts and what was really going on. She tried to deny everything, claiming I was being paranoid. It was infuriating. I could see her lying right through her teeth. The more she spoke, the more I could feel my anger boiling inside. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my ears. "I know you're lying, Amanda. I'm not stupid. I've been watching you slip away from me for weeks, and I deserve the truth." Her eyes darkened as she realized I wasn't going to back down. She finally exploded, "Fine. I've been seeing someone. You don't understand me anymore. You're always working, and I just wanted some fun." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt the ground beneath me give way. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt surreal, like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. As she continued to ramble on about how I hadn't paid enough attention to her, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. I had tried my best to provide for us, and now I was being told it wasn't enough. The pain of her betrayal was burning, and as I contemplated what to do next, I knew I couldn't just walk away. I had to think this through and make a plan. I decided then and there that I wouldn't let this slide. There was going to be a reckoning. I just needed to figure out how to get my revenge. After that explosive confrontation, I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. The world around me blurred, and all I could focus on was the betrayal. Amanda had crossed a line I didn't think she ever would. I spent sleepless nights running through our conversations, trying to piece together how we got to this point. The anger simmered beneath the surface, but there was something deeper, a sense of helplessness that gnawed at me. I thought about my options. I could just walk away and file for divorce, but that felt too easy for her. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, and while I had been treated like a fool, I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand the pain she had caused me. I needed a plan, some way to turn this around to my advantage. That's when I came up with the idea. The nightclub where her affair was blooming, the Velvet Room, was a popular spot in downtown Nashville. It was where she met the DJ, where she danced the night away while I slaved away at my desk job. It struck me. What if I bought the club? I could ban her from ever stepping foot inside again, making sure she would never be able to escape into that world without me. It sounded extreme, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like the right move. I began researching how to buy a bar. I had a decent savings account, but this was going to take a lot more than what I had. I reached out to a couple of friends who had experience in the bar and restaurant industry, hoping they could help me navigate this convoluted path. They were shocked at my plan but intrigued by the ambition behind it. If I was going to do this, I needed their support and funding. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into making this happen. I approached a few local investors, explaining my vision for the Velvet Room. I pitched it as a revamp of a dated establishment that could become a thriving nightlife hub, something sleek and modern that could attract a new crowd. They were interested in the idea, and after a few meetings, I secured enough investment to make an offer on the club. All the while, I kept up appearances with Amanda. I pretended that everything was fine, that I was willing to work on our marriage. I went through the motions, but inside I was planning my revenge. I remember one night after a dinner that felt unusually normal, Amanda leaned in and said, "You know, I've been thinking we should go out more together. Maybe hit up the Velvet Room this weekend." I smiled tight-lipped, hiding my fury. "Sure, babe, sounds fun," I said, while I mentally calculated just how soon I could have her banned from a place she loved so much. As I got deeper into the negotiations for the club, I learned that the owner was looking to sell due to financial struggles. It was a perfect opportunity. But I needed to act fast. I enlisted the help of a real estate agent who specialized in commercial properties. We went through the numbers, and as the weeks passed, everything started to fall into place. Finally, just as the stars aligned, I received the call I had been waiting for. The owner had accepted my offer. I was now the proud owner of the Velvet Room. I could hardly believe it. I felt a surge of power, a rush of satisfaction that danced through my veins. But as I stood at the edge of this new chapter, I reminded myself to keep my cool. This was only the beginning. The first thing I did was schedule a meeting with the existing staff and the DJ, who I now knew was the source of Amanda's betrayal. I wanted to make my intentions clear. I laid out my vision for the club and mentioned my plans to revamp the vibe. Everyone seemed excited, except for the DJ, who looked like he had just swallowed a lemon. I could see the tension in his eyes and realized he must have felt the weight of my proposal. After the meeting, I pulled the DJ aside. "You know, I've heard a lot about your work," I said, forcing a smile. "But I think we need to talk about some changes moving forward. I want this club to be a family-friendly space, and I can't have any distractions, if you know what I mean." He nodded, understanding the implication. I could see he was worried, and that made me feel powerful. I knew I had the upper hand now. I was the one in control of the narrative. The next step was easy. I drafted a lifetime ban for Amanda. It felt surreal to write it out, but I made sure to include her name and the reasons for the ban. My heart raced with excitement as I imagined her face when she found out she could never return to her precious club, the very place she had betrayed me. Finally, I prepared to confront Amanda one last time before everything was set in stone. I wanted her to feel my resolve, to understand that I wouldn't be the man she took for granted anymore. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions. I rehearsed my words over and over in my mind, knowing this would be a turning point in our lives. When the day came, I called her into the living room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, but my heart was steady. "I have something important to tell you," I said. The look on her face shifted. She sensed that I was onto something, and she was right. "Amanda, I bought the Velvet Room," I announced, watching her eyes widen. "And as part of that, I'm banning you for life." She stared at me, incredulous, then erupted into a fit of laughter. "You think this is funny? You really think you can control me like that? You're insane." I stood my ground, feeling the thrill of the moment. "No, Amanda, you showed me who you are. You think you can just waltz back into my life after what you did. This isn't a joke, this is my life, and you will never step foot in that club again." The reality crashed down on her, and for a moment I thought she might cry or lash out, but she just stared back in disbelief. It felt like the world had finally shifted back into place, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The look on Amanda's face was priceless. It was a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief, everything I wanted to see. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me as her laughter faded into silence. "You can't be serious," she finally stammered, shaking her head. "You think you can just take everything away from me because you're mad? That's pathetic." I maintained my composure, feeling more powerful than I had in months. "You made your choices, Amanda. You chose to tear apart our marriage. I'm just making sure you understand the consequences. I'm not going to be the guy you can walk all over anymore." Her eyes narrowed as she attempted to regain control of the situation, her voice rising. "You think this is going to hurt me? I have a life outside of you. I don't need the Velvet Room." I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I held it back. "Clearly, you did need it, considering what happened there. You went behind my back and chose the DJ over our marriage. This is about more than just a club, Amanda. This about respect." Her demeanor shifted from anger to desperation. "David, please, we can work this out. I can fix this." I almost felt a pang of pity for her as she pleaded, but I couldn't let myself go down that road. I had spent too long being the supportive husband, the guy who overlooked her infidelities and excuses. I had to stay strong. "No, Amanda, this is my final decision. You've shown me that you don't care about us, and I refuse to let you disrespect me any longer." For a moment the room was silent. I could see the realization sink in as she processed what I had just said. "You're being ridiculous," she finally muttered, her voice tinged with desperation. "You're going to regret this, you'll see." I wasn't interested in her threats anymore. "You'll be fine, Amanda. You'll find another place to go, and maybe, just maybe, you'll learn from this. But you won't be coming back to the Velvet Room, not now or ever." With that, I turned my back on her and walked away. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much this was affecting me. My heart was pounding, but this was a turning point. I was no longer the man who would take her infidelity lying down. As the days passed, I focused all my energy on the Velvet Room. I poured myself into renovations, changing the decor, improving the menu, and revamping the music lineup. I wanted to create the kind of atmosphere that would draw in a crowd, and at the same time make it completely unrecognizable to Amanda. I hired new staff and brought in a different DJ, someone who understood my vision and was willing to work hard to make it happen. But no matter how much I immersed myself in the club, the emotional toll of my actions weighed heavily on my mind. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss some aspects of my life with Amanda. Our shared memories, laughter, and the intimacy we once had felt like ghosts haunting me. I remembered the good times, moments that felt genuine and filled with love. Yet the thought of her betrayal always brought me back to reality, reminding me why I was doing this. Then came the day of the grand reopening. I had invited everyone, friends, family, and even some of Amanda's acquaintances. I wanted her to know that this was my space now and that there was no going back. I had arranged for a special performance to draw in the crowd, and as the night approached, I could feel the excitement in the air. The Velvet Room was transformed. The new decor was sleek, with dim lighting and plush seating. The bar was stocked with top-shelf spirits, and the DJ was ready to kick off the night with a killer set. As the doors opened, patrons flooded in, bringing an energy that felt electric. I greeted people with a smile, sharing drinks and laughs, but deep down I was waiting, anticipating Amanda's inevitable arrival. And sure enough, around 10 p.m. there she was. Amanda stood at the entrance, looking stunning as always, with her friends surrounding her. She hadn't seen me yet, and I took a moment to appreciate the look on her face as she scanned the room. I knew she was trying to piece together what had changed, and I could see the moment realization hit her. When our eyes met, I felt a wave of triumph wash over me. I stood tall, arms crossed, as she walked toward me, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You have got to be kidding me," she spat. "You think you can just take this place away from me and throw a party? This is absurd." I couldn't help but smile. "Welcome to the Velvet Room, Amanda. Or should I say, the place you'll never be able to enter again. Didn't you get the memo?" She looked around, the clarity dawning on her. "You actually went through with it," she said, her voice low. "Pathetic, David." I shrugged. "Call it what you want. But from now on, this is my space, my rules. You're banned for life." The words hung in the air, and I could see the tears beginning to form in her eyes. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it quickly faded. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for a reason. She had hurt me deeply, and it was time for her to understand the gravity of her actions. As the night continued, I watched her leave, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. A part of me felt a sense of closure, but there was also a lingering sadness. I knew I had closed a chapter in my life, but it was hard not to reflect on what could have been. The grand reopening was a success, and as I mingled with guests, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had taken control of my life, and while the road ahead would be challenging, I knew I was finally on my own path. I would rebuild, and this time it would be on my terms. In the days that followed, I dove into my work at the Velvet Room, but I also began to reflect on everything that had transpired. I thought about the lessons I had learned, the importance of self-respect and the strength that comes from standing up for yourself. I realized that even in the face of betrayal, I had grown stronger, more resilient. As I continued to move forward, I wanted to make sure I didn't lose sight of myself in the process. I needed to heal, to regain my confidence, and that meant finding new ways to fill my life with joy, without the shadow of my past lurking around every corner. I was determined to emerge from this experience with a newfound sense of self-worth, ready to embrace whatever the future held. The weeks rolled by after the grand reopening of the Velvet Room. I immersed myself in the bustling nightlife, the energy of the crowd revitalizing something within me that had felt dormant for too long. I worked hard to ensure the club was a success, but I also took time to reflect on who I was now without Amanda. One night, while I was busy overseeing the operations at the club, I met someone who would change the trajectory of my life: Sarah, one of the bartenders I had hired. She was vibrant and full of life, with a killer smile that could light up the room. Sarah had been working at the Velvet Room since the reopening, and she quickly became a favorite among patrons. At first, our interactions were strictly professional. I admired her work ethic and how she engaged with the customers. But as I observed her more, I noticed the subtle glances we shared and the laughter that would echo through the bar when we chatted. It was an innocent friendship at first, but I couldn't deny that there was chemistry brewing beneath the surface. One evening, after the last customers had left and the cleanup crew was finishing up, I found myself lingering at the bar with Sarah. "You really know how to bring life to this place," I said, pouring us both a drink. "I don't think I could have done this without you." She grinned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks. It's been amazing working here. I love the vibe you've created." As we talked, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Amanda or the pain she caused. I was enjoying the moment, and it felt good. We shared stories about our lives, and I realized how much I missed genuine connections. As the night wore on, I found myself leaning closer to her, and before I knew it, our laughter turned into a shared moment of silence that felt charged with unspoken possibilities. That's when I made a bold move. "Sarah," I said, my heart racing, "would you like to grab dinner with me sometime, just us?" Her eyes widened in surprise, and I held my breath, unsure of how she would respond. "I would love that," she finally replied, a smile breaking across her face. As we set a date, I felt a rush of excitement. This was new territory for me, dating again after everything that had happened with Amanda. But the idea of pursuing something real with Sarah didn't scare me. It invigorated me. Our first dinner together was like a breath of fresh air. We went to a cozy Italian restaurant, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. I found myself laughing and genuinely enjoying her company, and for the first time in ages, I felt a connection that reminded me of what it was like to be with someone who valued me for who I was. As we shared plates of pasta and exchanged stories about our families, I began to let go of the bitterness I had held on to. I didn't want to carry the weight of Amanda's betrayal into this new chapter of my life. I needed to release that anger to make room for something positive, and with Sarah, I felt hopeful. In the following weeks, Sarah and I spent more time together often, talking late into the night after shifts at the Velvet Room. I learned about her aspirations, her love for music, and her dreams of opening her own bar one day. I shared my passion for creating a welcoming space where people could come together and celebrate life. We discovered that we were both ambitious and driven, and it felt like we were building something together, something genuine. But as my relationship with Sarah blossomed, Amanda's shadow still loomed over me. I'd occasionally catch sight of her in the neighborhood, and each encounter sent a ripple of memories through me, memories of the good and the bad. I often wondered how she was coping, but I also realized that I couldn't let her define my future. One night, while Sarah and I were closing up the club, I spotted Amanda standing outside, looking in through the glass windows. My heart sank, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen her, but it was too late. Sarah noticed my expression and turned to see what had caused it. "Who's that?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. "That's my ex-wife," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Is she okay?" Sarah pressed, her brow furrowing. I didn't want to share the details of my past, especially not with Sarah. "It's complicated," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just glad we have this place to focus on." I watched as Amanda turned away and walked down the street, her figure fading into the night. My heart was racing and I could feel Sarah's gaze on me. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, placing a hand on my arm. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the emotions. "Yeah, seeing her brings back a lot of memories, but I'm moving on and I don't want that to interfere with us." Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "I understand. Just know that I'm here if you want to talk about it." I felt a swell of gratitude for her understanding. It was refreshing to have someone who genuinely cared about my well-being and wanted to support me. As the weeks continued, I worked on strengthening my bond with Sarah while keeping my focus on the Velvet Room. I had turned a painful chapter of my life into a new opportunity, and I wasn't going to let anything ruin that. But as the days went on, I wondered how Amanda was coping with my success. I heard from mutual friends that she had been trying to move on, but I knew that losing access to the Velvet Room stung. I had managed to take something from her that she held dear, and while I felt justified in my actions, I also hoped she could learn from this experience. One evening, as Sarah and I were enjoying dinner at the club, one of our regular business meetings, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. There was a buzz of excitement, and I realized that word had spread about the success of the Velvet Room. We were gaining traction, and the club was becoming a popular destination for nightlife in Nashville. "We're going to need to hire more staff soon," I said, glancing at the crowd. "This place is thriving." Sarah grinned, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I love it. We should plan some themed nights to keep the momentum going. What do you think about a retro night? We could bring in some DJs who specialize in that genre." I felt a spark of inspiration as we brainstormed ideas together, and it was in that moment I realized how much I had grown since Amanda's betrayal. I was no longer the man who would let life's challenges defeat him. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, both personally and professionally. But then, just as things were looking up, I received a text that would shake things up again, this time from Amanda. "We need to talk." She had sent it late at night, and my heart raced as I read the message. I stared at my phone, uncertainty flooding my mind. I knew I had moved on, but a part of me wondered what she wanted. I felt a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Did she want to apologize? Or was she just trying to stir the pot again? As I debated my next move, I realized I had a decision to make. Would I engage with the past, or would I stand firm in the new life I was building? I took a deep breath and prepared myself for whatever was about to unfold. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions as I wrestled with the decision of whether to respond to Amanda's text. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to continue living my life without letting the past intrude. But another part of me felt an obligation to at least hear her out. After all, we had shared years of our lives together, even if those years were now tainted by betrayal. I eventually decided to meet her, choosing a neutral coffee shop a few blocks away from the Velvet Room. The atmosphere was casual, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint notes of pastries, but I felt a heaviness in the air as I waited for her to arrive. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would she show remorse, or would she come to argue her side? My heart raced as I replayed our last encounter in my mind, the intensity of our confrontation still fresh. When Amanda walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked different. Her hair was styled, and she wore a blouse that accentuated her figure. She looked put together, but there was a nervous energy about her that I hadn't seen before. As she approached, I couldn't help but notice the slight tremor in her. "Hands, David," she said softly, taking a seat across from me. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "What did you want to talk about?" She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've been doing a lot of reflecting since we last spoke. I know I messed up, and I'm not here to make excuses. I realize now how much I took you for granted." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a wave of skepticism wash over me. "You say that, Amanda, but your actions don't match. It's hard for me to believe you've changed when you hurt me so deeply." "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling slightly, "but I've been trying to work on myself. I started seeing a therapist, and I've been focusing on my own issues. I just wanted to talk to you about the possibility of us, I don't know, moving forward." "Moving forward," I repeated, incredulity creeping into my tone. "You mean like getting back together?" "After everything," she nodded earnestly, her eyes pleading. "I've realized how much I care about you. I was so caught up in my own insecurities that I didn't see how good we had it together. I miss you, David. I want to make things right." I felt a mix of anger and confusion. Did she really believe that just because she had started therapy, everything could magically revert to how it was before? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms defensively. "Amanda, you broke my trust. You don't just get to erase that with a few sessions of therapy." I know I messed up," she said, her voice rising. "But that's why I want to apologize. I want to take responsibility for my actions. Can't we at least try to talk this out?" I stared at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "You want to talk, but how do I know it's not just another lie? You had an affair, Amanda. You went behind my back with someone else. Trust doesn't just come back overnight." "Please," she pleaded, her eyes glistening. "I'm not the same person I was. I've realized that I need to change. I want to show you that I can be better." I could see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the pain she had caused me, the heartbreak and betrayal that still echoed in my mind. "Even if you've changed, Amanda, that doesn't mean I can just forget what happened. I've worked hard to rebuild my life without you, and I'm not sure I want to bring the past back into my present." Her expression shifted from desperation to frustration. "So that's it. You'd rather hold on to anger than give us another chance." "It's not about anger, it's about self-respect," I replied, my voice steady. "You had your chance and you threw it away." As the conversation continued, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I wasn't the same man I had been when Amanda left. I had found strength in myself that I didn't know existed. I was building a future with Sarah, someone who treated me with respect and dignity. I couldn't let Amanda's regrets derail what I had created. "I think it's best if we don't keep this conversation going, Amanda," I finally said, cutting through the tension. "I appreciate that you're trying to change, but I can't go back to the way things were." Her face fell, and in that moment I could see the weight of her choices crashing down on her. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought maybe you want to try and repair what we had." "I'm sorry, Amanda, I truly am," I said, keeping my tone gentle but firm. "But I've moved on, and I wish you the best in your journey. I hope you find happiness." With that, I stood up, leaving her sitting there, a mixture of sadness and anger on her face. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I had faced my past and stood my ground, and it felt good to know that I wouldn't be swayed by guilt or regret. In the following weeks, I continued to focus on my relationship with Sarah. We grew closer with each passing day, exploring new things together and building memories that felt genuine and fulfilling. I introduced her to my friends and family, and the connections we formed felt effortless. But Amanda's presence still lingered. In the background, I heard through mutual friends that she was still struggling, trying to come to terms with her choices. I felt a pang of empathy, but I reminded myself that I had to prioritize my own happiness. I refused to let her actions dictate my future. One night, while Sarah and I were relaxing at the Velvet Room after hours, we talked about everything we wanted to achieve together. "What do you think about doing a charity event here?" Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "We could raise money for a local cause and it could really bring the community together." I loved the idea. "That's brilliant. We could host a themed night and donate a portion of the proceeds," I replied, envisioning the possibilities. As we planned the event, I felt a sense of purpose surge within me. This was what I wanted, creating a space where people could come together for a good cause, building something positive from my experiences. It was a stark contrast to the darkness Amanda had brought into my life. But just as I was feeling optimistic about our plans, I received a message that sent my heart racing. It was from Amanda again. "Can we talk? I really need to see you." I stared at the screen, my gut churning. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I also felt a sense of responsibility to hear her out. I took a deep breath and responded, "What's this about? I hope it's important." Her reply came quickly. "I need to apologize properly. Can we meet tonight?" I hesitated, torn between my desire to move on and my lingering curiosity about what she had to say. I looked over at Sarah, who was still immersed in planning the charity event, and I knew I had to make a choice. Would I risk reopening old wounds, or would I stand firm in my decision to close that chapter of my life for good? In that moment, I realized it was time to confront the past once more, not for Amanda, but for myself. I needed to put an end to this uncertainty once and for all. I typed out a quick response. "Fine, let's meet. But understand this, I'm not looking to rekindle anything." As I hit send, I steeled myself for whatever was about to unfold. It was time to face Amanda one last time and finally close the door on that part of my life, once and for all. The moment I walked into the coffee shop that night, I felt the weight of anticipation hanging in the air. I spotted Amanda sitting at a corner table, her fingers anxiously tapping against the surface. She looked up as I approached, and I could see the familiar mix of apprehension and determination in her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice shaky. "Let's just get to it, Amanda." "What did you want to talk about?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. She took a deep breath, her expression shifting from nervousness to something more resolute. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since our last conversation. I realize that I hurt you deeply, and I want to take full responsibility for my actions. I'm not here to make excuses, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I truly regret what I did." I studied her carefully, weighing her words. "I can appreciate that you're trying to change, Amanda, but what does that mean for us? You hurt me in ways I can't forget." "I know," she said, her voice breaking, "but I want to show you that I've changed. I don't expect this to be easy, and I don't want to rush you into anything. I just want the chance to prove that I can be better." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I felt an overwhelming sense of protectiveness over the life I had rebuilt. "You say you want to prove yourself, but the last time we were together, you were lying to me. It's hard to trust you again." "I understand," she replied, tears forming in her eyes. "But trust can be rebuilt, right? I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that I can change." I let her words sink in, wrestling with my own emotions. I knew I had made significant strides in my own life. I had found happiness and purpose without her, and the thought of letting her back in felt like opening a door I had carefully locked. "I'm not sure I can be the person you need me to be right now, Amanda. I'm still healing and I'm in a good place." "I respect that," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I hope one day you could forgive me, even if we're never together again. I miss you, David, in more ways than I can say." Her honesty pierced through the walls I had put up, and for a brief moment the weight of nostalgia washed over me. I remembered the early days of our relationship, the laughter, the love, the dreams we had shared. But those memories were overshadowed by the pain of betrayal. "I appreciate your apology," I said, my voice steady. "But I need to be clear. I'm moving forward in my life without you. I've found someone new, someone who respects me and encourages me to be my best self. I can't go back to the relationship we had, and I don't think we can ever rebuild what we lost." Amanda looked down at her hands, and I could see the heartbreak reflected in her expression. "I get it. I really do. I just wish things had turned out differently. I thought maybe we could find a way back to each other." "That's not how this works," I replied gently. "You made your choice, and I'm choosing to prioritize my own happiness now. I hope you can find what you're looking for too." She nodded slowly, the tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't want to keep hurting you, David. I wish you well." With that, she stood up, and the finality of our conversation settled between us. I watched as she walked away, her figure slowly disappearing into the bustling streets of Nashville. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This was it, the closure I had needed to finally move on completely. In the weeks that followed, I poured even more energy into the Velvet Room and my relationship with Sarah. The charity event we had planned was a resounding success, drawing in a large crowd and raising money for a local cause that resonated with both of us. Watching the community come together filled me with a sense of pride and purpose that I had long been searching for. As I stood behind the bar that night, surrounded by laughter and good energy, I felt a renewed vigor for life. Sarah and I shared glances, the kind that sparked with excitement and possibility. I was no longer the man defined by someone else's betrayal. I had reclaimed my narrative. Months later, as I looked back on everything that had transpired, I recognized how profoundly I had grown. I hadn't just moved on, I had evolved. I had learned the importance of self-respect, the power of forgiveness, even if that forgiveness wasn't for Amanda, but for myself. I had learned to embrace the uncertainty of life and how to channel that into something constructive. As I embarked on this new chapter with Sarah by my side, I felt hopeful. Together, we were building a future filled with laughter, dreams, and love. And while the scars of the past would always remain, I had finally found peace with them. Life isn't always easy, but as I stood in the Velvet Room, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings, I realized I was exactly where I needed to be, moving forward, one step at a time.